Good morning. This is Jason Dean coming live at you again for another Film Fanatic show. It is Thursday. I can't believe it's Thursday already at 8:53. So hope everyone's doing good. It is another beautiful day. We've had some pretty killer weather lately. So yeah, I've been knee deep in all kinds of new shows as far as reviewing movies that I've been watching and a few movies that I've gone to see in the theater. The last two movies I saw in the theater and I just uploaded. One is going to be premiering in a few days, I believe. But I've last two movies I saw in the theater were I saw the new Superman movie, which I actually really liked a lot, and I was surprised by that. Directed by James Gunn, it kind of made me. I don't know. In all, it's probably been a couple weeks since about 2 weeks or so since I've seen it. It kind of like I don't know made me interested in seeing what will come down the pike next for as far as James Gunn now being in charge of the DC universe. So I'm kind of excited about that. I didn't think I would be saying something like that, but it's pretty good. I want to buy it on Blu-ray. I kind of want to. I really want to see it again. I think on Blu-ray it will be pretty spectacular visually and the production and everything because it was that was a definitely a strength of this movie of that movie because I think a lot of the other films, since Spider-Man No Way Home, or I should say Spider-Man Homecoming and the Avengers Endgame, which I thought were the true last great Marvel movies. Uh, you know, and especially with DC because Superman's DC, the production value just I don't know. Like I don't know what happened. Like the CGI was not really working as far as from a production standpoint. I don't think, but I was really impressed with how it looked visually. That was a big strength. But I actually really liked the movie. And then I also saw last weekend. I went with some friends and saw the new Ari Aster movie Eddington, another movie which I'm eager to see again. I was kind of blown away by that movie. The movie is super intense, and I just set up. I reviewed Eddington, and that just came out last weekend. And I just set that video up as a premiere, so that's going to be coming your way soon. And I might, I'm probably going to be going to the movies again this weekend, so I'm kind of excited about some new movies coming out. And I might go see the new Fantastic Four this weekend, which I part of me is excited to see, and then part of me is like I'm not sure. And then there's another movie coming out which I heard, which actually looks really really good, and it's called Weapons. And I'm not sure when that's coming out, but I've heard that looks, or I've heard that it's really good. And I saw the trailer for that, and it looks really really awesome. So, and it's a horror movie. It's like a suspense horror film, I believe. But so we'll see. We'll see what happens. And then the other series I'm finishing up. I still have a few more episodes. Is I've been covering all of the episodes for Andor, the Star Wars series, which was I think it was the Disney Plus original series, which is based on in the Star Wars universe, but really awesome show. I was really I was kind of blown away by how good it is. Truly a standalone series. That's the thing that I look for the most when it comes to. I mean, because yeah, the age of franchises and series and sequels and prequels, like we're that's realistically it's not anything new in films. I mean, it goes back to all movies I grew up on, like say the Friday 13th franchise and Halloween franchise, Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise. You have the Godfather franchise. I mean, so it's been a thing for for a long time, but now in this kind of day and age, I think there's more of that, and there's so many, and we're kind of overwhelmed by the amount of sequels and the remakes and all of these things. So it's a little bit, as a fan of film and movies, it's a little bit daunting. It's and a lot of the times I don't think the studios get it right. But the quality that I look for the most is if the movie can carry its own way and be its own thing, and you can almost take the stance of just saying, I don't need to know about the origins of these characters, or I don't, to see this particular movie, I didn't have to see, you know, three or four previous movies that are tied to this story or television shows. You know, I think it should be its own experience. And that's usually what I look for. That's one of the things I liked about the new Superman movies. I like that it's not an origins movie. It's not a retelling of a story. It's all original. There's some things about there's some things in the movie that are very new that we haven't really seen before. So that's something I really look to for enjoyment, because I think at the end of the day, a movie is a movie, and it's meant to entertain us and take us away. Let us use our imagination for a couple hours, and that's what we should. That's what the experience should be. So anyway, I will be finishing up Andor soon. Like Andor, I think is a perfect example of that. Of that same thing. And I do think Superman, the new Superman, is another example of something that's definitely its own thing. It has its own legs. And again, Andor tied to the massive Star Wars franchise, and and of course Superman, the massive franchise that is. So anyway, I also went. I've been slowly reviewing the movies because I've been getting back to. I went to Bull Moose a few weeks ago, which was fantastic. I got some killer movies. I got this other movie, Nightmare, which was this killer slasher movie that I'd never seen. I have that show up on the channel. Really great. And got a few other exploitation movies. And then I went to last weekend, after we had gone to see Eddington, we went to Barnes and Noble, which is, we saw Eddington in Augusta, which is a pretty nice theater up there. And so, right in the same vicinity, Barnes and Noble is right down. There's like three or four stores down, which is an awesome, bookshop, music shop, and they actually sell magazines. Like, I'm amazed they're still around. But they had some really good deals on movies. I was really excited, and I got a couple of movies that I've been wanting to get for a super long time, and I got them really cheap. They had these incredible deals there. They had like 30% off on all of their Blu-rays, and and they also had quite a few DVDs or Blu-rays, 50% off, which was amazing. And I'd been wanting to get these two movies for a long time, and I bought them both there. And I got the 50th anniversary of Jaws, which is I was floored after watching it. I mean, it's incredible. It really was, as many times as I've seen that movie, it really felt like it was my first time viewing it. I mean, the transfer of the Steven Spielberg classic is jaw dropping on Blu-ray. And I did a big show on Jaws, and it was part of Jaws just celebrated its 50th anniversary. I have that video up on the channel, and I believe it's going to be premiering pretty soon. And then the other movie I was super excited to watch, and haven't watched it yet. I'm gonna watch it tonight. I only saw it once, and I saw it in the theater, and that is Godzilla minus one, which that movie is the shit, the bomb. And I saw that in the theater when it came out, and I was just blown away by it. So I've only seen it once. I'm really excited to see it again, and I've never seen it on Blu-ray. I got this really beautiful edition of it. I'm a huge Toho, Studios fan. Toho, the infamous Japanese studio that has put out, all the kaiju movies over the, for decades. And I remember feeling that Godzilla minus one was so good that I think it's, one of easily, the best one in years. I also really love Shin Godzilla, which came out a few years back. That movie's amazing too. That would be a really great purchase. But in recent years, with the Godzilla films, because there's so many, uh, I was just blown away by Godzilla minus one. So I'm going to watch that tonight, and I'm definitely going to do a show on that. So stay tuned for that. I'm super excited. So today's show, one of the movies that I got at my last trek to Bull Moose, is this unbelievable movie. And this is another movie I was just blown away by. It's one of the most bizarre, just whacked out, old school science fiction exploitation movies I've ever seen, and that is the Terrornauts from 1967. And this movie is just so bonkers. It was put out by Vinegar Syndrome, and this is an amazing edition. I never even heard of this movie before. I got a really good deal. I mean, it's so ahead of its time, I will say. It's definitely a totally. It's without a doubt like super super low budget trashy exploitation movie, but the the direction of this film and the acting and actually the script is really really good. The characters are fantastic, and I can't believe and I'm blown away that it came out in '67. It was put out by Vinegar Syndrome, one of the premier boutique labels out there. It was directed by Montgomery Tully. But what a fantastic movie! Really great cast. Simon Oates, Zena Marshall, Charles Hawtrey, Patricia Hayes, just fantastic. And again, it's kind of like I feel like this movie represents kind of the pinnacle of, you know, the science fiction craze that happened in the U.S. in the late '50s and in the '60s. Ed Wood and all of the super low budget, trashy exploitation movies, science fiction exploitation movies that came out. This was like, I think kind of at the pinnacle, like in that pinnacle decade in the U.S. Another fantastic movie, of course, is Forbidden Planet. There were so many great science fiction movies that came out, and the thing that I love about this movie is, well, it's just so pulpy and it's just so like bizarre and so the colors, like say for instance the color palette for this movie, it just explodes on the screen. I mean, it's just beautiful to look at. I mean, the cinematography is really great, and yet it's super kinchy. It's super, it feels like, at times when you watch this movie, part of it feels like, okay, maybe they had a pretty sizable like budget to pull off these, really ambitious sets that they were trying to build, and the world building itself. And then the other part of my brain is like, wow, like they did all this for like $65. Like it's so, well, again, I always say it, and it's a cliche thing to say, but I think, you know, cliches are well, they're real things. I think they cliches exist because there's a kernel of truth to it, and so it's the Terrornauts is a primetime example of it's so bad it's good. You know, it's it's so lowbrow and trashy. But again, I think there's something about this movie where there's a lot of dialogue in the beginning of the movie before there's a little bit before you get more kind of the plot reveal of what this movie's actually about, and it gets into the actual kind of meat and potatoes of the movie. And when well actually when they actually when these astronauts and these scientists actually meet the the aliens, it's it's pretty heavy. It's all dialogue driven, and it's really good. Like I'm surprised. I was surprised by that. Like it's actually really well done. The cast is great. It's super funny too. It's super goofy. It's super silly. But the science fiction element is really just again. It's totally whacked. It's totally crazy. One of the things that I remember almost saying to myself when I was watching the Terrornauts was like, wow, I would love to watch this movie high on drugs, even though I don't do drugs. Like, this movie is a trip. And I can't believe this came out in 67. I mean, this, again, like I said a few minutes ago, like, the 50s and the 60s and leading into the 70s, but especially like the late 50s and 60s, you had this explosion of all of these science fiction exploitation movies, and they were just, I don't know, in a lot of ways, these movies were not playing it safe because they were these a lot of the storylines were just totally out there and totally strange and not really conventional. Maybe at times they didn't make sense, but just totally whacked out and kind of I don't know. This movie has a very even though it's really silly and goofy, it's got this very almost like trippy psychedelic vibe to it. Of course, it came out in the '60s, so culturally, that was an influence, with this film. But it definitely has a very trippy, surrealistic vibe to it. But not really. Not it's definitely not a movie made for like the folks who grew up watching science fiction movies like or television shows, Star Trek, for instance. You know, it's not made for that kind of audience. I mean, it's so unconventional, it's so weird, it's just so strange, and it's whacked. And and I think compared to some more recent modern day science fiction movies, these filmmakers really were taking some chances, like story wise, like not really sticking with I kind of a better way to put it is I feel like there's a lot of more modern day science fiction movies that I think, in comparison to say something like the Terranauts, where the directors for a lot of newer films, in comparison, kind of play it safe. I mean, because this does not play it safe because it goes to some really trippy, weird places, and it's funny. It doesn't take. That's again one of the things I love so much about exploitation movies is you can see all the strings in the background. You can see the tape, holding things together. You can see some of the bad editing, but that's part of the magic. It's that whole thing of the rawness. The raw quality works for it, and warts and all. I love that saying. Warts and all, where it's just goes back to well, a couple of years ago I did a podcast. I was interviewed on a show, and this guy Matt who was doing the show had interviewed me about this channel, and I remember that was one of the questions that he asked me as to like why do I love these trashy movies so much? Like, why is this? Of all of the styles of film that are out there, and what have you, why is the why are you most attracted to the world of exploitation? And I remember saying to him, it's 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 the rawness of those films. It's, to me, it's like putting on a classic, super raw, nasty punk rock record. It's everything is just coming at you at once. And it goes back to that saying of warts and all. Like, I love, sometimes those little hiccups or those little mistakes or those glitches really add to the magic of the experience, and it's that rawness, that raw quality. And that's why I love this movie, Terrornauts, so much, and why I love exploitation movies. And it's just great. And I love that there's a lot of humor, there's a lot of tongue in cheek. There's a tongue in cheek aspect to it. There's and because I do think that everything, I will say, like, there's a lot of great new films that are coming out. We're living in 2025 here, and all kinds of television shows, and I've been doing reviews on newer things that I've seen, and they're fun and they're great, and I'm I try not to play that card of, like, what I call the grandpa syndrome, of where, oh, they don't make them like they used to. I try to, like, even though I watch a lot of old shit all the time, and that's my love, I try to stay up on new things that are always coming out. And I have seen some really great films, and I try not to play that card of, like, well, they're just, movies are not as good as they used to be, or albums are not as good as they used to be. But I don't know. I kind of lean towards that saying more, so more and more, just because they don't. I mean, they really, the thing that bugs me and irks me about contemporary filmmakers, whether they're making horror films or science fiction films or whatever, I feel, and the tone of a lot of films that are coming out, the last few years, and even with television shows, all the new series that are always coming out, is that everything is so, like, so serious, and everything is meant to be taken so literally, in this real literal way, and it's everything's really serious. It has to be really dark, and it has to be foreboding, and it has to be grounded. It seems to be this thing with everything that's coming out, for the most part. And it's, again, there's exceptions to that, but I think generally that's what's happening. And the thing that I love about these exploitation movies is that there is some levity to it. They're not, like, taking themselves so damn seriously, all the time. I think that's one thing I wish sometimes would happen in contemporary cinema, where the directors or the filmmakers can maybe lighten up a little bit, like, have a little bit of levity. It's, some things are too dry or just too serious. But Terrornauts is not. But again, I bought this totally cold, which I do a lot when I go to Bull Moose. I mostly go to Bull Moose when I do go. I don't go usually with a plan. There's certain movies I that are probably that are on my radar that I will look for and be proactively looking for them on Blu-ray. But generally, I go with no plan. The only plan I have when I go, because, again, when I go to Bull Moose, I try to seek out, all of these, super trashy movies. And when I go to Bull Moose, my only agenda when it comes to movies is to try to find the most low budget, trashy, thing that I can find. That's my only plan. But I go to other shops every now and then, like Goodwill in Rockland is the main place, which I haven't been in a while. I usually buy more quote unquote normal, movies there. But definitely when I'm at Bull Moose, that's where I will take a deep dive in the world of exploitation, and I will seek out the trashiest thing I can find, and that usually entails discovering incredible movies like this. And yeah, I can't recommend this movie enough. And again, I'm blown away that Terrornauts came out in 1967. It's so freaking ahead of its time, and it's just amazing. Such a killer movie. One of the best new additions that I have to my collection. So thanks again, and we will see you next time. Peace.